Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Cam.
Call the buzzer, folks.
Take him back! Take him out!
You die in prison as well.
Todd, do you whisper cheating right there?
First up, we head to Manchester, Iowa, for the trial of hog farmer Todd Mullis. He's been charged with first-degree murder for allegedly killing his wife of 14 years. In November 2018, Amy Mullis was found face down in a shed on their farm with a corn rake sticking out of her back. Her husband called 911, claiming Amy must have fallen onto the rake. Mullis put Amy in his truck and rushed to the hospital. While driving, he stayed on the line with paramedics who instructed Mullis to pull over and begin CPR.
Grab her and you're in the truck.
Okay, you're headed to the hospital and she's in your vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, sir, what happened that she's not conscious or breathing?
She fell on a fork. I had to fork out of her.
Amy Lynn died at the hospital, but it didn't take long for police to suspect foul play. For starters, Mullis had 6 stab wounds in her back, yet the corn rake had only 4 tines. It's the steel points at the end of the fork. The couple, who had 3 children together, also had marital problems over Amy's infidelity. And there were rumors about a possible divorce, which could result in Todd losing half the farm. Mullis was charged with murder, but pleaded not guilty.
Please be seated, everyone.
At the trial, Mullis took the stand. As prosecutor Maureen Hughes questions him specifically about his effort to save Amy's life.
Where is it that you performed the CPR on Amy?
I started in the truck.
And you're holding onto that phone and you're doing the chest compressions.
I had my shoulder holding my phone against my ear.
So at that point, the only people in the car are you and Amy, right?
Yes.
And at this point, you don't at all think that Amy's cheating on you.
No.
When you're actually there giving her CPR and you're giving those chest compressions, all you're thinking about is trying to save her life.
Yes.
At this point, the prosecution plays an excerpt from Mullis's conversation with paramedics, zeroing in on a faint whisper delivered from the defendant's very own mouth.
No, John, did you just hear that whisper at the end of that?
Yes.
And what did
Again,
do you whisper cheating right there?
No.
So you don't remember what you whispered?
No.
but prosecutor Hughes isn't done. She's got one more questionable comment to run by Mullis.
Okay, I'm gonna play another clip for you. Do you know what you whispered there?
No.
Did you hear that?
The prosecutor cues up the second clip one more time for Mullis and the jury.
Just try to listen really closely. I just want to know if you remember what you said. Right there, do you say go to hell cheating?
No.
So you don't hear that?
No.
You didn't hear at 6:53 cheating? You didn't hear that?
I didn't hear that word.
And it's right at that, after you hear a ping, you don't hear go to hell cheating.
No.
Turns out some members of the jury heard what was suggested by the prosecution, but others did not. Ultimately, it wouldn't matter. Additional evidence presented by the prosecution, including a history of Google searches on Mullis's iPad of phrases including killing unfaithful women, were enough to seal his fate. After 6.5 hours, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty. Mullis is sentenced to life in prison, where he'll have no chance at parole. Next, we head to a virtual bond hearing in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Judge Tabitha Blackman presiding.
Demetrius Lewis on page 26.
The defendant is Demetrius Lewis, who appears remotely.
How you doing? How you doing?
All right, I'm good, sir. How are you?
Lewis is charged with possession of an illegal substance and attempted burglary, a felony which could send him to prison for 5 years. But today, he's he's got other things on his mind besides his legal situation.
Judge, you're so gorgeous, Miss Judge. I just have to tell you, you're gorgeous.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
With the entire Zoom watching, Lewis makes a not-so-subtle play for the judge. Notice the reactions from the other parties, including prosecutor Eric Linder.
Judge, you're so gorgeous, Miss Judge. I just have to tell you, you're gorgeous.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Maybe Lewis's charm will help his cause.
All right, Mr. Lewis, flattery will get you everywhere, but maybe not here.
Or maybe not. Judge Blackman remains focused on moving forward with the case.
The court finds probable cause on count 1, burglary, occupied dwelling, unarmed. Count 2, possession of MDMA ecstasy.
$500 bond, no victim contact, no return. Noting the allegations, Your Honor, there were 3 children present in the home that Mr. Lewis was attempting to break into.
What? Okay, thank you, Mr. Linder.
Lewis objects, but the judge moves on to the defense and then renders her decision. She sets his bond at $5,000, which is significantly better than the $7,500 requested by the prosecution.
You're gorgeous.
Next, we're in Louisville, Kentucky, for the trial of 17-year-old Joshua Young. The teen's been charged with complicity to murder and tampering with evidence in the brutal killing of his 14-year-old stepbrother, Trey Zwicker. More than 2 years earlier, Zwicker was found bludgeoned to death in a creek near where the teens lived. Now Young is standing trial and has been implicated through testimony from a cousin who claims Young admitted to the killing. But just a few months earlier, it was Young's father, Joshua Gauker, who pleaded guilty to actually carrying out the murder. After being sentenced to life in prison, Gauker appears in shackles at his son's trial to remind everyone what he told them already, that he and he alone was responsible for killing his stepson, Trey Zwicker. His son Joshua had nothing to do with it.
Since arraignment court, I've told you I've done it. I admitted everything I've done. I've been sentenced for it. Life in prison. Yet here I am, going over this same f***ing story.
Gauker also explained his motivation for the horrific crime: to get even with his wife, the victim's mother, after she aborted their unborn child. In his confession, he said that he alone used a metal pipe to beat his stepson to death and left his body in a creek.
You're the mastermind, right?
I mean, you can call it what you want. It's not easy to be a mastermind when you're dealing with dumb people.
But prosecutors believe he was trying to protect Joshua. They're not buying the father's story and press Gauker for details.
You told the judge that after you all smoked the blunt, then Amanda fell asleep?
Yeah, she fell asleep.
And that you went out on the couch to play Mortal Kombat?
I don't know. I know what you're doing. You're trying to make microscopic little holes in the that I didn't even give a about 2 years ago. So how can I tell you the exact thing now when I really didn't give a then?
If you're telling the truth, it shouldn't be so hard.
Finally, when asked why he killed his stepson, Gauker delivers a chilling answer.
And it just felt right. I mean, I know it sounds monstrous and all that, but it's not. If it was in the Old Testament, it'd be the same thing.
Not guilty of complicity to murder and tampering with evidence. But the story doesn't end there. 6 years later, despite his father's confession, Joshua Young claimed he was the true killer in a detailed confession letter obtained by the news media. Young wrote that he was, quote, ready to get the raw and uncut truth out there, yet never provided a clear motive for the murder. Despite the confession letter, under the legal principle of double jeopardy, Young cannot be tried again in a criminal case for the murder of Trey Zwicker after having already been acquitted.
All right, Missy, Jennifer Cangemi.
Now to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where Judge John Hurley is conducting video bond hearings with inmates in Broward County.
Ms. Cangemi, charged with an aggravated battery. Finds probable cause. Do we have any priors on Ms. Cangemi?
Judge Hurley's then informed that the defendant is 17 weeks pregnant, a crucial fact for understanding the crime.
Okay, so, unusual set of circumstances, 4 o'clock in the morning, and defendant allegedly threw a cell phone and hit the victim, Mr. Edwards, in the head. The defendant is 17 weeks
pregnant, and she stated that she was craving Oreo cookies and became upset when she discovered that Mr. Edwards had eaten her Oreo cookies.
The victim, Mr. Edwards, is the baby's father and alleged Oreo thief. Notice as Judge Hurley reads from the case file.
And she stated that she was craving Oreo cookies
The defendant can't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation.
and became upset when she discovered that Mr. Edwards had eaten her Oreo cookies.
But what's not so funny is the injury brought on by her cookie craving.
He received allegedly 3 staples in the head as a result of munching on her cookies.
I think the harm was greater than the intent, Your Honor.
That's Public Defender Dale Miller, and apparently he can relate to the situation.
I know you've been here before. Oreo cookie cravings can be awfully strong. I would ask you to be as lenient as possible on the bond in this case.
Before setting a bond amount, Judge Hurley talks through the curious details of the case one last time.
She's pregnant. She's in jail. She's got no criminal record. And somebody ate her Oreo cookies. So
I'm familiar with the facts.
that does seem like a mitigating factor here that we can't overlook. Ma'am, let me ask you, who's going to bond you out of jail?
I don't know. I have the money at my house.
Okay, I'm going to do this, ma'am. I'm going to release you on your own recognizance, all right? I'm going to allow you to have telephone contact with him, all right? You have to stay 500. Thank you. All right, ma'am.
Good luck,
Ma'am.
And before she leaves, Judge Hurley shares one final thought.
Ma'am, can I give you some advice? Hide your Oreo cookies next time, right, ma'am? Don't let anyone get near them. All right, ma'am.
The charges against Jennifer Kangemi would later be dropped. This is the Turner Guilford Knight Correctional Center in Miami, Florida. And this is Eduardo Arama. Arama is supposed to be locked up inside said facility, but he's not. And that's a problem. The inmate did not escape. Instead, a paperwork error triggered his early release into the public on what just happened to be his 52nd birthday. It was a nice present, considering Arama still had just under a year to serve, linked to criminal mischief, probation violation, and shooting or throwing a deadly missile into a dwelling or vehicle. Yes, throwing a missile into a dwelling or vehicle. After realizing the mistake, authorities issued warnings to the public, including this wanted flyer. Based on Arama's criminal record, his accidental release was a serious situation. For nearly 3 days, there was no sign of Arama until he resurfaced in an unlikely place. On a Zoom call with the Miami-Dade Circuit Court. That's Arama, who despite being aware that he's currently a wanted man, looks pretty relaxed from an undisclosed location with a friendly little pooch on his lap. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Broward County Court set up an easily accessible portal for remote hearings. Prior to his release, Arama had a hearing scheduled for today that he should be joining from inside the correctional facility. But instead, it looks like he's on the patio. Despite being wanted by police, he shows up for his hearing and is even a little early. At the time, the only other person on the video call is his attorney, Assistant Public Defender Fadia Salem. But after a brief conversation discussing his situation with her, he hangs up before the actual hearing begins.
Mr. Arama is a sentenced inmate. He is sentenced to state prison. He was released in error.
As you know, Mr. Arama was present. His video was working. Then he turned it off.
Ms. Salem, have you spoken with him about surrendering?
Judge, I have spoken to him. This is his only request. He has only but a few possessions left to his name and a dog. And he's merely asking for the court to give him a date to surrender so that he can find somebody to take those possessions.
Despite the fact that Arama is supposed to be in jail, Salem continues to make the case for a little more free time for her.
The authorities' calls, appears in court on Zoom, is not at risk for a flight. We're merely asking for a day so that he can get his possessions to somebody to take care of.
But Judge Marlene Fernandez-Caravezos seems to think Arama's dog-sitting vacation has lasted long enough.
He's had that day, Ms. Salem. He was released on Monday. It's now Thursday. He surrendered today.
Eduardo Arama was taken back into custody the following day without incident. The Miami-Dade Department of Corrections issued a statement saying, quote, "Our review of the circumstances surrounding this inmate release is ongoing to include a full internal investigation." For our next story, we head to Alpine, Texas, for a hearing conducted over Zoom that caused quite a stir. The case involves illegal contraband, and the judge is Roy Ferguson, who can only be heard via audio. There are 3 attorneys present. We have H. Gibbs Bauer. Next is Jerry Phillips. And finally, we have Rod Ponton.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to
we're trying to. Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's filtered.
While everyone was no doubt surprised by the guest feline and probably gave them pause, you wouldn't know it, as the other parties remained totally professional.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings.
Although Bauer does put on his glasses to get a better look.
You might want to
we're trying to. Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is. I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
Ponton's comment gets a slight smile out of Phillips.
I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that.
Ponton says he was unsure how the filter appeared on the screen, but the problem was quickly rectified, and the judge later posted the clip for educational purposes, as a reminder for all to check video option settings before joining a virtual meeting. It immediately went viral, receiving over 10 million views, and became a catalyst for memes across the internet.
I think if you click the up arrow...
Ponton was understandably embarrassed by the incident, but said if he could give people a laugh in these difficult times, then he was happy to do it at his expense.
I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
Joining us, you are not a cat. You are a person. There you are.
How you doing, Dan? I'm not a cat.
So what happened?
Well, Dan, I was using a secretary's computer at one of my remote offices. We've been doing Zoom court hearings for 9 months. You check into court, you get into the waiting room, your picture appears in the waiting room, and then the judge calls the case, and he pulls you into the virtual courtroom. So there I was, waiting in the waiting room. The judge called the case. We transferred to the virtual courtroom, and miraculously, I appeared as a cat, to my great surprise.
Well, that's all we really wanted to know.
Perfect. That's PURRFECT.
Yeah.
It wasn't my computer and it wasn't my cat, but it's forever bonded to me, I think, for the rest of my life.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being such a good sport.
Thank you so much, and I hope everybody got a big laugh out of it. We'd all had a stressful year, and I think the world needed to have a good chuckle, even if it's at my expense.
That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.